Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is currently Wednesday. It is May 4th. It is 2011, and this is Day 9, daily number 299. Holy butts. That is a very, very big number. Tomorrow's 300, and ordinarily I do something really special every 100 episodes. And tomorrow I'm not, because it is my final week of graduate school, so I kind of just have to take care of that. Literally, in 1 week, on May 13th, I will have a Master of Fine Arts in Interactive Media from USC. So to celebrate, I'm wearing my Zerg shirt because I'm feeling overpowered today. I am in a fantastic mood. And I will note that we'll have an extra special guest today. It is birds. Turn up your microphone, or turn up the sound really loud. And they stop. What? Those birds are such assholes. No, seriously, I leave my window open all day because there's these happy little birds that just chirp like crazy, and it puts me in a great uplifted mood. But today, once they went live, it looked like they were a little bit camera shy. But they may make a cameo later on. You just don't know. I'd also like to note something that makes me very excited. Jinx is coming out with more StarCraft shirts on Friday. Woohoo! So then I can continue my StarCraft pride. And I'm getting a little concerned because almost 100% of my shirts are StarCraft shirts. So that's going to be awesome. I literally am looking in my closet, and there's like the Team Liquid shirt. I got the wellplayed.org shirt. I got the Probes and Pylons shirt that some fine individuals handed me in Germany. Yes, that is right, because we're all about StarCraft. Also, big heart to Blizzard, who did a little interview with me and posted it with many links to here. So, whew, pressure today. Many new viewers, potentially. But I digress. The topic of today is going to be a guy named Happy. Now, some of you may not be familiar with Happy. You're probably obsessed with some super ultra names like the ones that are going on in NASL right now. You know, like Chef and Tielo are playing today. Artosis. God, I want Artosis to go through so bad. Like, seriously, I've known Artosis since, I think, 2003. Yeah, I guess it's been a long time. Almost 10 years now. So, of course, I need him to go through so badly. Oh, my God. But, sorry, but I digress. The topic of today is a man named Happy. I'm over at sc2ranks.com. Let's check out what I'm talking about. Kadoosh! That's right. Let's go ahead and scroll on down here. You see this? You see this guy Happy? He's on the Europe server, considered to be one of the tougher servers, right? Considered to be quite extraordinarily difficult. And you'll notice that he has, I don't know, an 86% win rate. I'm actually going to sort this by just the European server because I'm super interested in seeing, oh yeah, look at this. Look at the win rates as we go down, right? Yeah, we got some really high ones, but Happy, with a ridiculous win rate, had it over 90 for over 90% for a really long time. So he's extremely intimidating. So what got me pumped up about this is I thought Happy was initially a Smurf, right? I thought it was maybe the Muslim or one of those other top Terran players we haven't seen in a little while. But as it turns out, he's just a guy, right? He's just happy. He's always been happy. He will continue to be happy, assuming he maintains over 85% win rate. So I stumbled across some of his games on SC2 Rep and checked him out, and what was so delightful about his play is that it was nothing tricky or fancy or unorthodox. He literally just plays so clean. And there's a couple of key concepts that we can draw a lot from Happy's play. Let's go ahead and take a blast through of this first game, because this is something that I'm sure many of you do. First of all, yes, the sound was on. That's right. Yes! 1 point for day 9, going right into the cast. Perfecto. So we're going to see Happy. He's going to do, he's going to do some usual sort of barracks refinery business. And what I'm doing right now is I'm pretending I'm your average StarCraft 2 player who, watches some replays for entertainment value, checks some stuff out. Yeah, just sort of going through it. Oh, it looks like Happy's doing some sort of tech opening. I bet he would go Banshees. Oh, goodness, he does. How contrived of me to have seen this replay multiple times before doing a stream of it. So we're going to see, it looks like a Hellion coming down. Shoink, and then a Banshee, doth poppeth, etc. And we're going to see from our Protoss hero, it looks like some kind of 2-gateway expand build. And these Banshees are actually going to come in and be the most annoying thing in the whole wide world, right? It ends up just wiggling its way around the whole screen and leaving with like 5 hit points. In fact, both of these Banshees end up escaping with almost no life. And it's really fun to watch this through initially, because I'm never really seeing Happy's money get too high. It always seems to be continuing to be spent. I mean, he's going for Marines and Marauders. He's getting appropriate upgrades. Is he getting, like... oh, yeah, he has all those upgrades. That's nifty. He's continuing to be annoying with these Banshees, always popping around. What's his APM like? Well, it's high, but it's not outrageous. It's not, like, select level. But look at this. He's taking an expansion and coming in with a pretty typical, clean-looking, normal army. In fact, his army is not even really that tremendously big. I mean, he has 12 Marauders, he has a couple Medevacs, he has a good number of Vikings, some Banshees. This Raven here is actually quite helpful in the battle, but he ends up just smoking his opponent. Absolutely murdering this guy named Thew. So, what's really great to watch through this game again is to try to figure out how is it that this Terran player, Happy, did kind of what all other Terran players do, but managed to do it so unbelievably well. And this is oftentimes this mysterious zone that happens between watching a diamond level player versus like a top grandmaster level player. They're both getting approximately the same mixes, but somehow these grandmasters are getting the same mix 2 to 3 minutes faster. And one of the big concepts to note is something I did a podcast on way freaking long ago for Brood War that was on the following two things that I call redundancy and extending the purpose. Redundancy and purpose was the name of that podcast. And it's the idea that on the redundancy aspect, you want to make sure that you are not doing the same basic task more than once. And the extending purpose thing is to make sure that whatever unit or structure you're building, that you're using it more than just one time. You're extending its usefulness over time. Let's step onto the redundancy aspect for a moment. There's some obvious examples of this, like a Protoss player who will get hallucinated phoenixes, send them in to check out what the Zerg's doing, and a little while later get observers too, to also kind of check out what he's doing. Kind of doing the same thing twice, right? But there's more subtle examples that end up happening. That one's like super obvious, just, to make sure everyone's on the same page. But something like, for instance, if I built a bunker and got a siege tank with siege mode really fast, one might ask, well, the bunker, at this point in the game, will hold off anything that will really be thrown at me. So why am I trying to get that siege tank up so quickly? And what we're going to see from Happy is that he has very few redundant elements in his gameplay. Everything's very crisp, doesn't do anything too excessive. I think perhaps some of the most guilty examples of redundancy would be something like a Terran player who has a Raven, but still builds an excess amount of turrets to deal with Banshee harass, just because it makes him feel a little more safe. Terran players just building an extra 2 or 3 bunkers, just saying, oh yeah, it's salvageable and free. Well, not exactly, right? You can get more barracks in the meantime, because those bunkers cost money. The purpose thing is sometimes a little bit difficult to conceptualize, but as I continue to clean my permanently dirty glasses, they're only dirty when I cast. They're clear all the rest of the time, except right now. But coming back to this purpose notion, we're going to see some very clever things done with the starport tech, in particular through Happy's play, that we're really going to see. He's not just getting some Banshees really fast. He's going to be using that starport constantly throughout the games. And it's what I like to call a very lean style of play. He's not saying, I'm going to get a Banshee and then I'm going to get 12 barracks, so that way we have like this huge, gross excess of barracks and a starport we're never going to use and a factory we're never going to use. He's going to be using them all game long together. So we're actually going to be drifting through this game relatively slowly this time, trying to pick up on all the ultra cool things that are going on here that, again, are very subtle, that are very easy to overlook if you blast through this somewhat quickly. I'm not going to go through the very start of the game on normal speed because there's really no need to do that. The important thing to note is that Happy is against a Protoss, and we're going to be regularly kind of just checking up on the Protoss, especially at times when we're going to look at Happy's mix and say, my goodness, aren't you about to die? Alright, so there we see Happy now building himself a supply depot. Little things like this might not seem like a big deal, but occasionally drops do happen. So if you have a supply depot here, you can actually lift this depot and constrict a little bit of movement from those warp prism drops, or just constrict a little movement if a probe gets into your main. And we see that a barracks is going down, a refinery going down, and we see a scout popping out right now. Not too early, not too late, just kind of a pretty reasonably timed thing. Note that a zealot will generally pop out at about 3 minutes and 40 seconds, so there's no real reason to end up getting it any sooner, because we're just trying to spot when our opponent's second gas timing is, and to get a little bit of information on his chrono boost. So this SCV is going to be getting there right on time. As expected, we end up seeing this this good old Marine go popping down, as expected, but already this is a little tiny thing that you're going to see a lot of players do that is just extending the purpose of the supply depot to not just be supply. He's using it as a little bit of a spotter. Not so close to the edge here that he can get picked off by stalkers, but close enough that it helps him get full vision of his base in case there's some sort of goofy warp-in antic happening or in case a probe's just trying to hide. He has an easier amount of time scouting through his base. And I know a lot of Protosses especially do this. Some Terrans might not do this. Some Zergs especially are sometimes a little bit irresponsible about placing overlords around their base. But I love to gripe on this supply depot example because it's such an easy notion of, wow, the supply depot that I just built is this functional thing. If I just thought of all the things that I could maybe extend a little farther, I can start getting a lot of use out of the buildings I build anyways. We see even Boxer building excessive supply depots to wall off his front. So that way he can protect against banelings, doing things like building a wall of depots across here, along with his Nexus. Being a little bit of a bully with that Marine. Looking good. Speeding things right up, right away. We are seeing Happy maneuver around here. I want to note that you should never scout unless you know exactly what you're looking for. Counting Chrono Boost is something good. Counting this Cybernetics Core timing is good. Yep, around 340. That's typically when the Zealot pops out and when the core finishes. So here's the Zealot. Oh, it looks like he's popping out 1 second too late. Very bad Zealot. But also getting a good pylon count. Because if you're in your opponent's base and you see one freaking pylon, you know things are going on. As expected, he's getting a factory as we ended up seeing. So nothing too extraordinarily out of the ordinary. And now we see a bunker going down. This, I think, is a move that might seem a little bit early. But this is where some of our big timings end up coming into play. I can tell you that about around 410 to 420, that first Stalker ends up popping out, especially depending if there's a Chrono Boost. So look at the production tab with me. See that Stalker that's out on the map. All right, and here it's going to now end up popping out. Yeah, that's around the time we start our bunker. A bunker is 40 seconds long. Here's some facts you should know. The distance from here to here with a Stalker is like 35 to 40 seconds. Isn't that useful now? Isn't that a useful bit of information? Especially if you're kind of hanging out at like those silver and gold level arenas. You generally have a feeling when you're at that level of, oh god, he could attack me with a Stalker. It's just an event. It's not an event that happens at a certain time, right? It's just, ooh, there could be a Stalker. And this is where the redundancy comes in, the overcompensation, the going a little bit too far, having too much fat on the build, and this type of thing. But if you can just say something like, Stalker should pop out at 4:15, and it's about, I don't know, let's say we're on Tal'Darim Altar, it's like 1 minute and 10 seconds between bases. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but if you know it, hey, you can have a really, really easy time with this bunker. Knowing some distances of some basic units can be really, really, really good for a lot of fancy stuff. So, at this point in the game, I think that what will end up happening is that a lot of people can mimic Happy's build to this point and match it exactly without any sort of trouble in the slightest. But I wanted to take a few moments to just note some of the more salient aspects of the basics because, hell, a lot of people just mimic and they have absolutely no freaking clue why. Hey, isn't that awesome? Look at that Stalker. Can I just note how useful this timing is? We're actually going to sneak my overlay back. Come here, little overlay. Yeah, let's bring you back. Yeah, let's tuck you nice back. There we go. Yeah, see, we're going to see the Stalker pop out at 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Boink. And here we're going to see the Stalker at 4 minutes and 15 seconds. It ends up walking. And at what time does it arrive at the other guy's base? At 5 minutes. That's right. About 35 to 40 seconds. Took about 45 seconds because the gateway was pulled back. But again, these timings are very, very useful to know because you can always be rest assured that that will come in handy, even if you're Zerg or Protoss. So now we end up seeing a pretty typical thing. We see a Hellion end up popping out. We see more Marines getting produced. we see a starport coming down. And now, I would say, at about this time, this is where players will get a little bit lost. A teensy-tiny bit lost. This is an opening that I think a lot of people do, especially at the top levels. A lot of people, especially do it at the bottom levels, going, God, I hope he forgot detection. A strong method for careening into the Platinum Leagues. But, like, but it's kind of funny because there's a moment where, even if I state exactly what you want to do, there's, like, a ton of questions that arise. Like, for instance, what do you want to do in this matchup? You could say something really simple, like, I want an expansion, 4 barracks making Marines and Marauders, and I want that starport making medevacs. That's really easily stated. But now we need to say things like, well, do I want to, on my first barrack, should I be getting a reactor, or should I be getting a tech lab? When I do get my tech lab down, do I get stim first, or do I get combat shield first, or do I get concussive shell and a bunch of Marauders first? Should I be favoring Marines early, or Marauders early when I do this? There's a whole bunch of problems that end up arising, and this is where you end up seeing a lot of subtlety in Happy's play that's going to end up being absolutely magnificent. And in particular, we're going to see him do some very, very, very nice control. So he's going to end up poking up here with a Hellion. This is a pretty useful maneuver to get early on, is just, a very quick Hellion, because even though it often doesn't really do that much, you are almost guaranteed to scout exactly what's going on with your opponent. So we saw Happy actually starting a barracks, starting a bunker, and then canceling it. And you always want to do this when you're looking at someone from the first-person point of view to kind of, like, double-check, like, what does my opponent have? Oh, he has 2 sentries, a stalker, and a zealot. Of course Happy could have canceled that. And definitely I think Happy would have been wise to throw down an extra bunker. Just in case. It would have been wise to throw down an extra bunker had he not seen this Nexus. So we're getting a good sense of what that factory was initially used for. And we're also seeing that, hey, this factory wasn't just landed willy-nilly. He landed it in a way that helped lock off an entrance to his base. Helped manage things a little bit better. So now what we're seeing Happy do is he's using this barracks, but not so much to build any units. He's just doing it to get a really, really, really fast stim. And a consistent theme that we're going to end up seeing in this game, as well as the second game we're going to look at, is that Happy is very good at having lots of small unit confrontations. A lot of Terran players like Thorzane, you'll see just get really, really fast 2-2 on his Marine Marauder and just walk a giant 170 food army for a victory. We're going to see Happy do a little bit more cool stuff with that. We see a second Banshee coming out right now. We're actually going to pause right here at 7 minutes and 30 seconds, and we're just going to note this time really fast. I want to come down here and actually spend some time looking at some of the micro aspects of what he's doing. He's actually going to be quite bold with this Banshee, but never really too extreme with it. He's doing little things. Notice that he is getting as close to on top of the Stalker as he can. As he does this engagement, he waits till the last second to cloak, and he's not being really extreme. He's not going to wait, until he's at, like, red health to end up doing it. But he's going to get very close to the Stalker and force this Stalker back. He's not going to be waiting here. He's not going to be picking off these 2 probes. He's actually going to be targeting the ones that are farthest away from him. And that'll allow him a few more guaranteed kills on those trailing probes, which we'll see him pick off in a second. But I think that one little move, see how he was here and he actually pulls back? You will always see Happy close to an edge. He's going to be extremely aggressive. Look at this. He's already going to be taking damage, but he is going to just have this nice little edge where he can always end up pulling back. And it's kind of funny to note that the way Happy did this little manipulation with his Banshee is really, really solid. There's only one observer out right now. And this is one of these things that comes up where you'll hear me talk a lot about calculation. You hear me say a lot of things about, oh, it's about 45 seconds here. Oh, you have about a 3-minute window to do this because I've looked at a lot of games and I kind of know that now. But this is a great example of good just judgment in a game. If I start shooting at a bunch of probes and they run away, he probably doesn't have an observer yet. And now that he has seen me, he must only have one observer. And that is a very, very subtle, tiny little thing that's easy to overlook. Because a lot of times, you'll have that instinct of, I see a Banshee, therefore he has detection, therefore I have to run away. Well, it's not that his whole base is detected. He only has one observer. So what we see Happy do is he actually convinces this observer to end up moving down, or to end up moving, He convinces the observer to kind of move down to this end. And as he pokes up here, he can immediately hightail it back to the left a little bit. He's going to do a couple subtle pokes, but it's interesting to note that at exactly one of these, there will be an observer. Unless he's trying to be really, really obnoxious and keep the observer right on the Banshee's tail, keep it directly here, you'll generally be able to run this Banshee out one of the two sides. So you see him kind of juking back and forth, discovering which one is the easy way out. And what he's going to do is just take this Banshee and hit from the other side. Little tiny micro maneuvers where he's basically manipulating the position of that one, manipulating the position of this one observer. And Happy consistently picks off a couple of extra probes as he's on the retreat. So, just wanted to note that for any of you who end up having ambitions to be some sort of giant maestro of the Banshee, or perhaps who are doing these sort of micro-focused openings but weren't really knowing what to do. I mean, everyone sort of knows about the stop and shoot, but little tiny maneuvers are going to help keep Happy alive a little bit longer. So we see two more barracks going down right after the command center, and we're going to see some very, very cool swapping action go on here. Hey, look, a supply depot going down, helping to constrict this wall off. I mean, we honestly have our opponent completely pinned back, but sometimes your opponent will do something ridiculous, like, oh my god, I'm going to lose, and counterattack all in. Supply depot, little tiny technique that will help you stay alive a little longer. Now, let's talk about this extending purpose little trivia piece. We're seeing a Raven now pop out of the starport. The starport has been busy start to finish. From the moment it has popped up, we have seen the starport doing stuff. I'm just going to say, note down here, we see some Banshees doing some funny business, but we're not going to be caring as much about that. We're mainly going to be looking back at the main until about 8 minutes and 50 seconds, then we can pay attention to these again. Kind of funny to note that Happy is actually not macroing particularly well. Which, obviously, you know, if I were Happy, I'd be like, oh cool, there's a place that I can improve. I need to macro better when I'm microing my Banshees really hard. Maybe I need a better hotkey setup. But what I want to note is that you can play just as great as Happy. I mean, it's not like Happy has a million APM and his eyes are all over the place. We're just going to see some more really good decision making that could be bolstered by some other techniques. And I've seen him do this before, where he'll kind of poke around, and if he feels like he has time, he'll end up getting a reactor really, really quickly, and not really make too many units. And here we see a beautiful little swap. Notice how busy the starport is constantly. And now that he's landing this second barracks here, he can easily begin to produce all the basic sorts of things that he wants. Marines, Marauders, a medevac. Again, look at how busy the starport is constantly. And he'll be getting combat shield in a moment. Important thing to note, look at these Banshees. These Banshees are just now returning back home. This expansion was completely safe because all of Blue's units are pinned back in his main. Here are the Stalkers and an Observer here. Here are some Stalkers and an Observer here. They cannot actually move out. It's kind of funny how difficult it can actually be to secure yourself an expansion here, but suddenly, with a very clean, simple, easy distraction, there's really not that much worry for us to do. We can easily move down here, and you know what? Here's where this whole double defending thing comes in about redundancy. Happy does not actually have that many units. If we go to the unit counting station, we see that, you know, if our player, Sue, I still don't even know how to say his name, if Sue had maybe been macroing a little better and perhaps had not been going for Colossus, he would have had a lot more units, but still Happy, even though he has almost no units, like almost no units at all. Almost no units at all. He still actually ends up being safe. He has just barely enough. Some very beautiful transitioning going on. And again, how active these Marines are. Not just fodder for a bunker, but this Raven popping right on out. Going to clear out his base. Extremely active little starport here. And now he's going to be getting himself a reactor. Money's staying consistently low. Everything's staying intuitive. Getting himself one refinery here. Oh, getting supply blocked. How humiliating. Now here's a technique that I've seen Happy do a lot. He opens up with a split Banshee harass. And I'm actually really guilty of this, where I love Cloaked Banshee openings. I do my harassment with my Cloaked Banshees, and then I kind of go, all right, and then I'll maybe, pull the Banshee back, maybe try to really get in there again, maybe do a little poking, but basically I kind of consider that Banshee dead a little more frequently than I should. And what we're going to see Happy do is a very smart thing where he initially goes for 2 Banshees to force this Protoss to really worry about covering all his bases at once. And then, after he knows that he's spread the Stalkers a little bit thin, he's going to group the Banshees together again, after he's come back for a full, complete repair. If they have too few units, you can actually just kill off a lot of these Stalkers. But look at this, Banshees ending up taking out another, basically 5 free probes, and these Stalkers feel even more inclined to stay pulled back. And in the meantime, this starport has never stopped doing stuff all game long. We see a relatively late engineering bay, kind of a late 4th barracks, and a very simple looking composition from Happy. Like, really simple. But we suddenly see a command center end up getting thrown down after all of this. And every single time Happy's Banshees get hurt, he just repairs them and marches them right back out again. We're going to see this in like pretty much all of his games. And we now have this extremely solid looking opening where Happy's been broke the whole time, is getting all the units that he wants to. The only thing that I would maybe potentially say he could think about is what extra stuff could we do with this factory. Even something as simple as landing it here to close off a little bit more space if this was potentially a problem. But Happy, yet again, going to move out. And if you ever see your opponent going for a fast Colossus, somewhere between 10 and 13 minutes, 10's actually quite early, you'll end up seeing them take a third base. So I kind of like that Happy was moving over to the right side. Super active Banshees. Super frickin' active Banshees. 1 medevac. All the rest Vikings. Now getting himself an extra little medevac Viking mix. And what I want you to just note about this army is to just look at this and think about the way that a typical Terran army looks, where they'll get a ton of Marines and Marauders, and then they'll go, holy crap, my opponent's going Colossus. And they'll get like 3 starports. Well, actually, I shouldn't exaggerate. They'll get 2 starports, but both of them will have reactors, and they'll try to get like 16 Vikings up really quickly so they can one-shot the Colossi, land everything, and then my Marauder army can kill your Gateway unit army. But instead, we're seeing an extremely small force pop out of Happy. And if this Nexus, say, went down a little too early, Happy would have the option to end up moving out. Now, I want you to know how early of a push this is. This is at the 13-minute mark. This is pretty darn early to end up having a really easy engagement. Looks like, ooh, the Wicked Skew ending up blocking that for a moment. But we're seeing a very fast third go down, and now Happy can begin flooding down a frick ton more barracks. And even though Happy has been doing a very, very simple-looking structure and doesn't have a gigantic army, I mean, it's even in the small single digits, as we said before, 16 Marauders, 11 Marines, a Raven, 7 Vikings, 2 Banshees. With all this variety that's been going on throughout the whole game, Happy's going to have a outrageously strong army very quickly. He has point defense drones thanks to this incredibly fast Raven. This Raven was even used early on to spot those pesky observers. Sue really has very few Colossi out right now because he's been spending all this time trying to build Stalkers. And that was one of the most one-sided looking games that I have ever seen in my frickin' life. That game looked so easy. And there was not a ton of barracks. I mean, that was basically a push from 3 barracks. And the starport, I mean, he didn't have 2. He just had like 1 starport and 3 to 4 barracks and really good timing and really great control with the Banshee. And what's so cool, again, to note at the end of that, it's the exact same look that every Terran kind of wants to go for, but because he did all these very cool little reordering things, giving that tech lab to one of his barracks, having the starport and make 2 Banshees and then a Raven and then immediately lift and then build a medevac, using the Banshees to line up timing so he can get his expansion up, having the Marines and the Raven poke around for the Observer. Just overall, extremely, extremely solid set of little tiny transitions. And A lot of Terran players will be watching these games and be, thinking along the lines of, I'm going to steal that, right? That's a cool build. I want to do that build, so I'm going to do that build. And you'll do it, and you'll probably end up getting a lot of wins. Nothing wrong with that. But what I want to note is that this is an example, again, of this whole idea of looking at your build and saying, am I doing the same thing more than once? Trying to think of some awesome kick-ass examples. Some of the easiest examples are when Terran players, especially in Terran vs. Terran and Terran vs. Protoss, who early expand will make too many bunkers when they really don't need to. They can actually have all their Marines out in the middle of the map because they just have the bigger army. And they can't maybe engage the Protoss because the Protoss will throw down a lot of force fields and it'll be hard to maneuver in there, but you don't need all those bunkers thrown down. We saw Happy just get a very simple 2 getting thrown down there. We're going to see Happy do kind of the same build this game. He's going to have a lot of the same general techniques, but we're going to see a little bit more aggression pop out of him. Because this isn't one of those sort of dry rote, just do it builds and hopefully things will turn out well. Because you get that early Raven, and because you get this really, really early Stim, you can end up putting pressure on way more frequently. And here we see Happy is sort of glancing around, trying to get a good sense of what's going on. Assimilator going down, probably would not expect an ultra-fast expansion, probably not some sort of one-gate expand, although he might. Sometimes that can be a little bit problematic. With this gas steal, you might think that Happy now cannot go Banshee. How tragic. Notice again with the early bunker placement, having that pop down just in time. And the refinery gets taken down, nifty thrifty. We're still going to see Happy go for a Banshee. Pretty awesome to note that you can actually pull that off. And we're seeing Happy throw down an attempted bunker at the other side. And this is one of these little techniques that you'll think of, and you'll go, oh, I guess I'm just going to do that next time. But I would honestly say that this is in response to Happy's own gas being taken. If you wasted 75 minerals trying to build an assimilator, I can easily waste 100 minerals trying to build a bunker. Moreover, because I didn't get my second refinery so quickly, my SCV's been mining a little extra money that I didn't really need for my build anyways, so I can use that on this bunker. Never, ever, ever, ever do some little tricky thing like that unless you know exactly how it affects your build, because it's so easy to see a pro do it and say, I'm going to do that too, and to do the trick, and the trick works, but then your whole economy's botched up. That can be very hurtful. Per usual, we are now seeing an ultra-fast Banshee come down. Not any sort of cheesiness at all, but in fact a very stable, solid way to play. And there it ends up landing. We're going to see him get the cloaking first, and then get himself the Banshee. Same little tiny things that we're seeing. And if you actually watch a lot of ultra tip-top players play a lot, you'll see them do tons of little things very, very consistently. Hey, look, there's our supply depot completing our extra wall off. Here is a tech lab coming down relatively early. We're going to see 2 more barracks get constructed yet again. Where is that second barracks, Happy? Build a second barracks. Well, in the other game, he was able to build 2 barracks clean away at the same time. In this game, it looks like he got his tech lab a little early. Little tiny bumps. But you know what? Those little bumps are what I would call, refinement issues, where things aren't as perfectly lined up as they could be. But in terms of basic general decision-making, this is so strong. Unbelievably freaking strong. So we are now seeing the ultra-fast Stim come down. Hey, that means that we can end up pushing in like 3 minutes if we wanted to. 10 minutes and 30 seconds for a push is pretty darn early. Might not sound that early, but as we're going to look at Siu, we're going to see that he almost feels pinned back to his base again because he knows that a Cloaked Banshee is coming. And this is one of these moments that will always make you feel like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have gone Cloak or Rats. We're going to see Happy, again, be super annoyingly aggressive with this one Banshee and pull it right on back out. And you can even create little triggers for yourself where you can say something like, when I drop to 60 life, if I'm against 1 Stalker, that's when it's time to run away. Or if I'm against 2 Stalkers, I got to leave when I'm at 80 life. Simple sort of things to do. You want to have fewer guessing games. These are the sort of calculations you can make outside of games, where that way you can just be very calm. There's no fear anymore when you're playing. There's not like, ooh, I hope I get away in time. You just run away when it is at the appropriate retreat time. A really fast Robo Bay going down. Anytime you see a Robo-Bay go down, it's going to be 3 minutes until we see that Colossus pop out. It's going to be 3 minutes. Because you'll note that, it's 3 minutes from when the robotics facility goes down. So there we go. It's 2 minutes for the Colossus when you end up seeing this robotics bay get thrown down. Because look at that. It's 1 minute for this on the Robo facility. It's 75 seconds for the Colossus, but I'm assuming you're going to be spending Chrono Boost, which means that you can get it out in 50 seconds if you're perfect on the timing. 65 plus 50, about 2 minutes. So interestingly, what we're starting to realize is that when we started our stim right then at that 7 minute and 30 second mark, and it's about 3 minutes for that, and about a minute later he ends up getting his robotics bay down, holy crap, we can push him right when he has just one Colossus. Just one single Colossus. And it's very easy to get intimidated by the Colossus because if you just don't know little timings, it can be really scary. But we're seeing now more and more why Happy's just general timing is very good. But in particular, even if you were completely ignorant of the timing, even if you had absolutely no idea whatsoever, all the basic principles of Happy's build are awesome. And there we see the harassment popping in. He's attacking from the angle where it looks like the stalkers are walled off. Going to stay there, and hey, it looks like at about 80 hit points, he's going to end up retreating. Super bold with the Banshees. He seems to always be able to get a guaranteed 3 or 4 kills. And there we see Marauders popping out. We're going to see, oh, look, a nice little swap action happen. And you'll notice that this is not the exact same build again. Last game, this barracks kept his reactor and began churning out Marines. Last game, this starport just landed by its lone old self, built a medevac alone, and then got itself its own reactor. In this game, wow, he's getting a much faster reactor. Now, why would that be? Well, easy. He popped right in here and saw that there was a Robo Bay down, and we're going to see Happy now plan for an extremely fast push. So we see that little swap go down, speeding things along. Hey, look, there's the stim, there's the combat shield. We're starting to see some Vikings get produced. We see, a little bit earlier of a 4th refinery go down. No huge variety of structures, just a very simple set, and now getting himself a bunch of Vikings. Hey, what did I say? If you see your opponent going Colossus, generally between 10 and 13 minutes, you end up seeing him approach taking a 3rd base for himself. Here's an instance of that. Now, as we note, at 8 minutes and 30 seconds, we saw this robotics bay go down. Therefore, at 10 minutes and 30 seconds, plop, out comes one Colossus. Not a lot of Colossi out right now. Just one old, naked, freaking easy-to-do Colossus. Banshees still being extremely pesky, picking off sentries, picking off anything that they can. And here is one of the coolest little micro tricks I think I've ever seen in my whole life. He is just going to retreat this Banshee like crazy. Look at him just going nuts. That is some really bold Banshee control right there. Holy cow. He actually probably should have lost that second Banshee, but that's fine. I will just allow Happy to have himself his little boss title. So we see, it looks like the Marines going up there scanning, stimming to walk away. Do we see that engineering bay down? No! Hey, look at that. We see yet another little difference between that last game and this game. In the last game, there was a bit more stuff in the main. We saw that the barracks had the reactor on a little bit longer. We saw that the engineering bay was down earlier for the upgrades. So we had 4 racks and an engineering bay. In this game, we see 3 racks, starport with a really fast reactor, no engineering bay. It's a very smart, focused, targeted build. He's responding to what he's seeing in the opponent in an intuitive way. But the fact is that this starport, still, I want you to acknowledge that it has never stopped being busy all game long. It has constantly been bouncing around. This barracks been busy all game long, adding Marines early on for a bunker and then immediately getting a tech lab to get really fast stim. This second barracks that wasn't necessarily making units, but this barracks has actually made himself 2 reactors. A small set of buildings have been ultra busy. And last game we saw around a 13-minute push come out. In this game, we're going to, around a 13-30-second push come out. In this game, we're going to see a 12-minute push come out. Look at how unbelievably tiny this force looks. We see the Banshee. Oh, excuse me, Dinner trying to get out. Oh, how dare you, Dinner. We see a very tiny little force, but we see a Raven with a lot of energy. We see a good number of Vikings. We see a medevac. We see all the necessary upgrades done because we started that stim so early. And look at Sue, who's been broke. He's been broke all game long, and he's doing what every Protoss wants to do. Chrono boosting a lot of Colossi. He even has range done. He's even getting a forge. Ooh, yes, you know, photon cannon's pretty typical. But I think a lot of Protosses are going to be very surprised when a push comes up this early, in this small of a number, because you can easily throw down the point defense drone and pick off one Colossus. You know, I know that people like to get their 16 giant control group of Vikings and one-shot a Colossus, but you can have a small number of a small number of Vikings get guaranteed shots and kill a Colossus off early enough anyways. And that's something that sounds fine on paper, but that's very hard to kind of throw into your play. So by having this very, very nice, cute variety, Happy is suddenly having all these aggressive opportunities at his fingertips, and has an extremely easy cleanup despite having basically no units. But look at how lean he's being. These Vikings easily end up participating in the battle. Another Colossus tries to rear its ugly head, but of course we have Vikings rally to the front, and they do so get taken out. I know that might not have been a solid win for Happy, you know, as in like, though it wasn't GG necessarily, he cut down on the opponent's Colossus by 3. He got himself up an extra expansion. And he's still running strong with his old set of unit-producing structures. Going to speed things up a little bit right now. There's the barracks going down. A little disappointing that we ended up losing our Raven. But you'll notice a consistent theme whenever Happy is not being annoying with giant direct attacks that could end up winning him entire games. He is just wandering around with this Banshee, relentlessly so. The same Banshee that's been around all game long, and as you will note, if he has 2 observers, he still cannot cover 3 bases at the same time. We're going to see more goody goodness pop out from Happy's end. And in a moment, we will begin taking questions from the crowd. I will open up Marky's amazing question answering script. That is fantastic. That is some good stuff. We'd just like to prep you for that now. And oh, hey, look, whoopsie daisies, as I was opening the question script, how tragic. I ended up almost nearly skipping over an incredibly awesome battle. Here's another one of these little things. That ends up happening. Kind of under the radar if you're watching a game really, really fast. But what we've seen Happy do is be very smart at splitting his opponent's army up, or forcing his opponent's army to be one place, and then exploiting that like hell. Right? If I get 2 cloaked Banshees early, you have to have some Stalkers and an Observer in your main, and some Stalkers and an Observer in your expansion. Cool, we've split it up. And then I can group my Banshees together and attack one of those because I know that it's weaker. And here we have 1 Banshee. And you almost never see Terrans being this aggressive. Look at how freaking small this force is by Terran. 2 medevacs. Upgrades, no. Vikings, 5. But Protoss, because he was battered down early on. And look at this. Oh, yeah, trying to swing on over. Yep, let me try to pick off that Banshee. Oh, what the fuck? Attack. Oh, how tragic. Really simple, really solid, and very clever little composition trickery going on. And look, just easily pulling everything back for a moment. Landing the Viking. Gonna micro the way that Marauders were born to micro. And in the meantime, we see a Banshee continue to be annoying. Hey, look, 23 kills. That guy could submit for Fun Day Monday. That is so great. A little bit of a tragedy. Alas, we end up losing our Marauders. But that's fine because we have a whole nother army back home. Yay! An army! In fact, Happy is underbuilding barracks. How disappointing. Oh, he could so have more engineering bays up. Again, little tiny, easy, simple stuff. But it's those first 2 attacks that were just so magnificent to watch. The whole Banshee harass straight into a very early push, which is pretty uncommon in Terran vs. Protoss because of the fact that those sentries are just so potent at dealing with those early Marine Marauder mixes. And look at this, just sort of waltzing over here. What can this really do? What, come out in the open against a whole bunch of Marauders? I do not think so. He picks that off, pulls back. Simple, simple, simple. Simple, simple, clean, awesome, and Happy, amazingly, is just extending way, way the hell forward in food. Protoss trying to expand as best he can, but he is going to get continually cut down. The most Colossi that have ever been on the field at any point in time is 3. You'll notice how easily the Marines and Marauders can clean all that good stuff up. We're going to take questions. Yes! Taking questions. Refreshing page. Oh, Marky. Oh, your script isn't working, Marky. Oh, no, Marky. Oh, it glitched out. Let us see here. Let us see here. Okay, so... let us see here. Let us see here. We're trying to think. Here's a reasonable question from Gray9. A clever pun on the word Day9. The question is as follows. Dear Day9, I struggle with similar looking Banshee harasses Protoss. I really feel like the Banshee is completely guaranteed to recoup its own cost. Is it simply a given that you will lose 3 to 5 probes, or is there something I can do to snipe the Banshee? Now, it's important to always think about what is the obnoxious thing that's giving me trouble. What is it really, really good at? And what does it make the Terran really, really bad at? I'll pick that up momentarily. So, okay, yeah. So a Banshee, really good at killing probes. Like, really good. Really good at making the Terran opponent seem like a dick. Okay? Really good at that. What is it bad at? Terran is going to be horrible at having any units to attack the front of your base with. Assuming that he's not going for some sort of crazy, nutty, all-in on one base. Which, again, is something that you can just do some smart scouting to spot that. But let's just kind of throw the all-in out the window. And let's say we're playing against Happy. What is that going to be not so good at? The thing it's not going to be so good at is, again, direct attacks. Big attacks at the front. So what can you easily get away with? Forge and upgrades. Actually, if I threw down 2 forges and went for +1/+1 upgrades and just went Stalker Observer, is there really anything that my Terran opponent could do about it? Is there really anything that would get in the way? No. I mean, really the only scare that you have when you go for those double forge upgrades is sometimes you can get overthrown with an early push. Sometimes you can get overthrown by a Terran who sees it, and then he double expands himself, knowing that you probably can't do much pressure yourself. These types of things. But if it's a Banshee, what the hell else can the Terran freaking do? In a sense, you just say, yeah, bring the 3 to 5 probe loss on. I'm going to get a huge advantage somewhere else. In fact, it's one of those situations where I actually don't really mind an ultra-fast Colossus. I really don't. We saw Siu have some huge problems when he tried to take 3rd bases while going Colossus. That was the thing that we saw in both games. But, I mean, if you just take, like, 1 base, or excuse me, if you just take 2 bases and kind of go Colossus and end up getting a lot more gateways, kind of how Huck, you'll see him play against some dropship-style players, and you get like a Forge kind of fast for upgrades, there's not that much that the Banshee Ing player can do about it. The more aggressive your opponent is being in any matchup, the more reasonable it is to just kind of sit and hang out and build a big force and then move out later, and amazingly you end up winning. Because even if they recoup their cost in terms of the harassment, they still had to dump some money into the harassment that hurt them in some other ways. So always feel free to kind of like sidestep it, just sort of jump out of the way. Yeah, Zagster11 even kind of continues on the same point. It says, Dear Day 9, why can't the TOS use the static defense, such as cannons, to cancel the Banshee out? The one thing I always want you to be careful of is just doing the obvious response to that unit and then not kind of asking what other effect does it have. Absolutely, a cannon would be able to deal with the Banshee harass. Absolutely. That is correct times 50. But it also means that you spent 300 minerals on 2 cannons, one at your main, one at your natural, that are only going to just have to hang out there. And you couldn't possibly cover both bases with just 1 cannon. You actually would probably need 2 cannons to cover from a Banshee, because you'll note that they're really good at hitting things from afar. Do you really want to build 4 cannons? Probably not. You're probably going to build 2 cannons if you're being reasonable. And I built 2 cannons. I have committed myself to passivity with those 2 cannons. You might want to just think about doing that and going for double forge. That seems reasonable. Again, he's going Banshee, and the way I'm going to deal with it is to get cannons, but because I have these forges anyways, I'm going to begin to get upgrades. That is an example of extending the purpose of these forges, right? You do not want to have these forges up just for the sake of cannons, because then they have a one-time use. And again, you don't want to have redundancy and get cannons and observers and stalkers. If you did expand and you have the robotics facility down and you see Banshees, just don't get the cannon, because you'll be double defending against the Banshees. So, let's go ahead. TM Claim 13 asks if he can has my babies. Yes, just email me with a time and place to babies@day9.tv. Killer Pimp asks the obvious things. Where can we find these replays? sc2rep.com. Look up Happy. You'll find tons of games. Of them coming up. Let's see here. Bum-ba-dum-bum-ba-bum. Here is a great final question that we're going to wrap up with from Sapricate, which is just a cool sounding thing to say. I hope it's not some awful internet meme that, if you type it in, you'll end up being linked to something horrific and X-rated. But either way, Sapricate now saying, Dear Day 9, I feel that I have a case of wimpitis, where I only attack when I feel comfortable with a 200-200 army. How can I overcome my passive play style? So, two very easy techniques. Somehow my glasses have gotten all foggy and grody as we end up coming to the end of the daily. It's fine, I'll clean it off. Two ways to cure wimpitis where you don't end up attacking very much. The first one is to do it all on your own by doing what I call placing stakes in the ground, where you say something as the following. I will attack when I am at 80 food. Yeah! And when you pick that 80 food, make sure that you watch a replay and have maybe some benchmark, maybe one of your own replays, so you can kind of go, 80 food, he looked weak last game, so next game I guess we'll attack at 80 food. That's fine. Do that. That seems great. And then, what happens if your attack gets mauled at the 80 food mark? You say, did I attack too early or did I attack too late? For instance, if a Colossus just popped out, maybe I didn't attack early enough. Maybe I should have attacked before that Colossus popped up. Maybe I attacked a little too late. Maybe I need to have more units to deal with the Colossus. So let's say you just decide to do it later. I will now attack at 90 food. You just put a stake in the ground. You cure your fear of attacking by arbitrarily picking a time and space where you're going to attack and just moving it every game. Like for me, I was having wimpitis in Terran vs. Protoss, so I was like, I'm going to attack at the 10-minute mark. Or at 80 food, whatever benchmark I decide to use. Oh, too early, I'm going to attack at 11 minutes. Oh, too early, I'm going to attack at 12 minutes. Oh, maybe I was a little too late. Okay, 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay, cool, now I kind of have a time where I'm always moving out at 11 minutes and 30 seconds. And I was probably maybe doing 2 games at the 11-minute mark, just to, double check maybe I screwed up or something. But you want to just sort of work through it. The second really great way to cure your wimpitis, kind of similar, you watch a pro and watch like 10 games of really good pros playing Terran vs. Protoss, and you just kind of say, when are they moving out? Oh, cool, Happy just moves out right when he ends up taking his third base. I'm going to move out whenever I start taking my third base. And you'll end up winning a lot of games because you're just kind of doing something correct that he was doing correct. And then you can kind of discover over time why it necessarily is so good. There is nothing wrong with a naive approach to just saying, I guess I'll just do this. Keep in mind that there's only so much theory crafting that you can do in a lot of circumstances. There's a lot of times things that sound fine on paper from both sides that you really just need to test. It sounds theoretically reasonable to state the following. I'm going to get Immortals and Sentries to hold off a 4-gate push in Protoss vs. Protoss. That is how I'm going to deal with it. I will force field the ramp and just have a few units up top, and I'll use my Immortal to absorb the damage and deal a lot of damage and just constantly force field with my excess of Sentries. But Do you have enough gas for that? How do you survive against the Zealot Stalker pressure early on? You gotta test. You have to do some tests. Because no amount of theory crafting is going to be able to handle the explanation of those 15-second windows where, yeah, if he does this, I have an immortal in time, and if he does that, I miss it by 5 seconds, and I can't get a force field at my ramp. Those are the sorts of things that you need to test. So feel free to just do tests with arbitrary stakes on the ground. Bam! That's going to wrap up the daily. A little shorter than normal, but I'm sure you don't mind. Announcements coming up. Jinx StarCraft 2 shirts on Friday. Rocking it. So I'm going to be getting myself some of those. So that way I have 100% StarCraft wardrobe. And I will always be fashionable while at the club. Yeah. Fun Day Monday next week is the Hero Unit Fun Day Monday. Please submit to monday@day9.tv, a game where you have one unit that is the hero. You hotkey him as 0, and he gets over 50 kills. Please include in the replay submission what unit got over 50 kills and how many units it actually ended up killing. So that way we have some fun digital stories to watch. I would also like to note that, unfortunately, nothing special happening for episode 300 tomorrow. Really noteworthy. Maybe I'll think of something while I'm arranging my final week of graduate school. Also, there's not going to be a Newbie Tuesday next week. There might not even be a show on Thursday. Things are very hectic in these final days, but I want you to know that in 1 week from Friday, I have a Master of Fine Arts in Interactive Media. Yes. You may now call me Master Day... Well, not yet, but soon enough you may call me Master Day 9. All it took was 3 years and lots of debt. Oodles and oodles of debt. Graduate school. I'm on go. Peace out, guys. Peace.